nightmare in the operating room. I had severe abdominal pain and I ended up in the emergency room. They did a CAT scan and told me that I needed immediate small bowel resection. I signed the consent forms, and then while I was on a gurney, at some point in the hospital, my head is being violently yanked from the top of my head to my chin, top of my head to my chin, and I finally open my eyes, and this person has his hand in my mouth, violently yanking on my front teeth that were permanently glued in. As he kept yanking, I managed to say, with his hand still in my mouth, "They're permanently glued in," at which point I passed out. The surgery was an open abdominal surgery, which means they slice you open. This is the sort of procedural page where they list the findings during that surgery. And as you can see, it says eviscerated here. They disemboweled me, and then they proceeded with the rest of the surgery. And then as you get to the very bottom, it says the rest of the small bowel was viable and was placed back in. I wonder how much they put back in. I was in the ICU, and the surgeon came in, and he said, "You're lucky. You had enough patency. You didn't need an ostomy bag." And I thought, how lucky am I? Because I was familiar with an ostomy bag. I thought, I'm gonna have my life back. I'm gonna be okay. I went home, and to make sure that I gave myself enough time to heal, I had some split pea soup. And as you can see here, with the red marker, my teeth fell in the soup. And then it was like, what? And then I remembered that the teeth had been yanked out. If you look at this x-ray, you'll notice by the root that there is some tooth missing. I went to the hospital to have them glued back in, and he said that at some point I would have to do something to repair them. But I figured as long as they were glued in, I would be okay. I was more concerned about the swelling and the abdominal pain that I was beginning to experience. So with the first follow-up, I took, I talked to him and I complained, and this is a photo following that follow-up. And I complained about the lump on the left that you can plainly see in the photo. And then he said, "Oh, if a suture sticks out, come back and we'll snip it off." I immediately went home and started taking notes. In the next follow-up, you can see the swelling is still there, and in both instances, I was promised that the swelling would go down. It didn't. And then I noticed that my eating habits were changing. I was feeling fuller. So I went back to the hospital to get more records to find out if there was something more I could do to take better care of myself and, ensure the best outcome of this surgery. And I found these little items in my records. Here, you can see by my fingernail a blue arrow. It says implants, and there's a funky little circle and a line through it that implies there were no implants. Looking further into my records, this is a nursing report that has to be recorded during surgery or at the time of surgery, what was done. And if you look closely, you can see the word records implanted devices during invasive surgery. What implants? And then, because there's no mention of implants in the operation report at all, they have to keep a supply list of all the supplies they use during surgery. So, I found this with the word implant on it. And as you can clearly see, it's a linear cutter and reloads, which are staples. I covered over the name of the company, and the little numbers all the way to the right are the stock numbers. A linear cutter and staples. I had a CAT scan done later. Of course, they didn't find those items in me. That was nice to hear, glad to know. And then, as it went on, there was this interesting piece of paper. If you look very closely, it's a report from the lab, and it states clearly this is a duplicate order, or that multiple parts should have been sent down to the lab with the original tissue sample of the small intestine. And these samples were sent to the lab 2 months after my surgery. And that is the reason there is no list of what they received, which is unfortunate for me. And why did they send them 2 months later? What was the purpose? And then there is the endoscopy that is listed in the ICD codes as being done. In my records, there is no record of an endoscopy being done. There is no report of what the findings would have been. So, where did the endoscopy report go? And why did they do it? Then, this is the nutritional assessment sheet. I'm going to go up very slowly on it. As you can see here, my weight was only 137. If you read down a little bit further, it says high nutritional risk, abdomen within normal limits upon admission, and towards the bottom above the black rectangle it says prevent malnutrition. Malnutrition. They only took out a foot. I have no medical experience, but usually they would only require that kind of intense nutritional evaluation if they had taken out so much intestine. There's a nutritional risk, and the person would have to be supplemented with vitals. These are only from my notes. This is not a medical opinion. This is just what I've gathered from reading this information for so many years. And then there is the hernia. There was no hernia in the original CAT scan, and later on, seeing different doctors, the word probable hernia shows up in writing, and probable hernia shows up again. Then they did a CAT scan and it says ventral hernia. Well, ventral hernia means that it's an umbrella for several different types of hernias that fall under that name, ventral. Incisional hernia being one of them. I complained to the hospital about it. I received a letter back from them that there was no hernia. And again, I was a very happy person. And then when the statute of limitations at 2.5 years for filing for damages or trying to get some kind of satisfaction for any erroneous procedure was up, all of a sudden in my records the word incisional hernia appears. This is only my interpretation of it, but incisional hernia implies that either the wound was not closed properly and it did not come together properly, and or it was closed and somehow not done again properly and it opened again, allowing the incisional hernia to occur. Okay, I lost out on that one. I called MESH people to try to find out if there was any way that I could get more information from them in my records if MESH had been used during my surgery. They told me emphatically that if they used MESH, it would be in the operation report, along with the lot number, and along with the name of the company. This way, if there were any complications, there was a way to trace it back and find out what went wrong, and also in an effort to help the patient to get a resolution to whatever problem they were experiencing. And finally, in the ICU, I had a visitor at 1:30 in the morning. This is her picture. It's a very accurate picture, and I'm looking over my left shoulder, and she never looks at me directly and says, relax honey, take it easy. And I passed out again. I went to the hospital and filed a report to find out if any medication or whatever had been used, and I received a letter from them saying that they could not substantiate the event. The problem is, It happened. It really happened. To this day, I have pain in the left side of my stomach. The swelling is still in the left side. My gut is disgusting like a bowl of jello. I can't get rid of it. My legs are like two bowls of jello that jiggle. I suffer from muscle weakness. I have to be careful what I eat. If I leave the apartment, I don't eat, or I can maybe have coffee. There could be consequences if I eat and I go out now on the street. Well, we won't talk about that. Yeah, I have to be careful walking so I don't trip because I'm afraid of the injuries. This is the life I was left with.